How do league executives, scouts, coaches feel about the quarterbacks in the NFL? Some pushback on how they ranked those quarterbacks in ESPN's off-season lists of top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. Matt and I will dig into that right now.
You're listening to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show, your daily podcast on the National Football League, powered by the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock and Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, coming at you every day in the off season. It's a fun time. Training camp's about to get going. And I was praising league executives, Matt, when we were talking about the defensive side of the ball and all the top 10s that were coming out. And for those of you who haven't checked it out, go find Jeremy Fowler's piece where he doesn't rank them, but he talks to league executives, coaches. They vote for the best players at each position group in the NFL. And when the quarterbacks one list was released, I think there started to be a little pushback, maybe some caveman old school mentality. You can still see that with the quarterback position, whereas there might be more free thinkers and more forward-thinking coaches and execs in the NFL. And maybe it's just that maybe it's just the quarterback position, Matt, but correct me if I'm wrong, is this felt like the oldest school list of all the positions?
Yeah, possibly. You know, we've done some of them where like Justin Simmons is atop the safety list. And, you know, not everyone might know Justin Simmons' backstory, where all these guys, of course, are quarterbacks, but they've been incumbents. I think this is an interesting list, and just by the tone of your voice before we hit record and your intro there, I might agree with this list more than you do. Just my hunch. We'll talk through it because I think this is a tough one to make this particular year. I'm not even sure who I'd have won.
It's that, and that's kind of the thing. And so, look,
I'm going to harp on the warts of these guys a little more than everyone knows what they're great at.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, there's Hall of Famers on this list, so it's not like you can say Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady are garbage and need to be lower on the list or anything like that. But it's some players that are left off and maybe not getting credit for how tough they make life on opposing defensive coordinators. That gets me a little bit, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But you know, it's Aaron Rodgers number one right off the top. Like he's one of the all-time greats. I'm not going to argue with that. I don't have a huge problem with it. I wouldn't put him at number one right now, but I understand why he's at number one, and it's going to be a tough year for Aaron Rodgers to go back-to-back number one, not only because he's 38 years old, but just because he lost his whoopee. Devontae Adams is gone.
Time, yeah.
You know, who knows if maybe last year was the last time that Rodgers will play at that high of a level, or who knows, maybe he'll just make a new Devontae Adams on that roster.
I mean, back-to-back MVPs, and this number I tweeted out last week is kind of mind-boggling to me. That over the last 2 years, his touchdown to interception ratio is 85-9. I mean, that's insane to me. And this goes back like 8 years, BP, before we were doing shows, that I've always considered Rodgers maybe the most underrated quarterback in history. And that was before this recent stint, because what I've always said about him, and this compares to the other Hall of Famers. I mean, you look at the 20 best quarterbacks ever. No one probably has a much better highlight tape than Rodgers, but no one has a better low light tape. I mean, he never makes bad plays. But I said I'm going to harp on the negatives with these guys. That's my concern right now. And somebody quotes him here that there's times in crucial situations where he kind of takes the low road, the easy road, the dump off, as opposed to driving it through the wind in Green Bay. And I think we have to bring up that as awesome as he's been in his career, and this is a very recent trend too, one Super Bowl and not a lot of playoff success lately.
That's exactly where I was going to go.
Yeah,
And part of it is because of my last memory of Aaron Rodgers is him not making a play against the Niners when there was a winnable game. And it's like, okay, cool. You didn't throw any interceptions, but go make a play, go make a throw. You might have to. And what's crazy is he makes some dangerous throws, but it's at the perfect shoulder, the perfect spot for Devontae Adams, where he can make the catch on a back shoulder or something like that. So it kind of, you're a Hall of Fame quarterback. Jimmy Garoppolo is the quarterback on the other side. You're at home in a playoff game at Lambeau. Go win the football game. And that's not the first time that we've said that same story. It happened again in 2019, although that was because his defense couldn't stop the run. But that's where I hold back. And I think about when I look at a list like this and I'm ranking them, who do I want to play against? I would still rather play against Aaron Rodgers than a couple of names.
or Allen or some of those types.
Then the next three guys for sure.
Okay. And I understand that. So I have mixed feelings on this, and this is a big picture topic with Rodgers, that if you have the best passer in the league, but you play in the worst weather in the league, maybe that's not conducive to winning NFC championship games at home. I mean, that's just something I talk about when you talk about his career versus Peyton Manning or Montana or other all-time greats. But the fact is you got to beat Jimmy. You know what I mean? Like you said.
Right. And his special teams let him down as well. But their special teams was bad all year, and they still won 13 games in the regular season. That's what Aaron Rodgers can really just throw down an emphatic dunk at the end of his career. If after losing his number one wide receiver, Devontae Adams, comes back this year and he needs that other Super Bowl. If he gets that next Super Bowl, the second Super Bowl, does it without his best wide receiver, you can really just, then he can just say, Peacock, what are you talking about? I'm number one. I'm out of here, and then retire and fade off into the distance as, maybe the second greatest quarterback of all time.
And I wouldn't put him past him to do that. I mentioned the coach quote. He said, late in the down with pressure, he won't always take risks. And then he ends that quote by saying, is he really trying to win? Like, you do see a little bit of that. And that happens to old guys too. Like, I'm not quite as happy when it's 0 degrees standing in the pocket after 17 games played of getting hit in the chin for an extra second to deliver the football. I mean, it's just, I said, I'm going to harp on the negatives. That's the negatives, because there's immense positives.
Why do you think Tom Brady chose Tampa?
Oh, exactly. I mean, Ben last year, Eli late in his career. Yeah. That's one thing I've always given Rivers credit for. Like, it's almost like he never noticed that he got old. He just would still take hit after hit.
The guy I'd still put at number one on this list is Patrick Mahomes. And again, he's not going to have his number one wide receiver this year either. So, okay, it's Patrick Mahomes' show now for sure. It already was, but now it really, really is in Kansas City, and we'll see what he's all about. It's actually kind of a big year for both Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers in that regard.
Absolutely. And again, you guys don't need to tell me that, boy, Mahomes makes a lot of really nice throws. Of course he does. But here's the concern at this point for me is, obviously, there was a blueprint of how to play the Chiefs. Make Pat Mahomes hit single after single after single. Don't throw them the meaty fastball over the middle. Walk them, make him, earn everything he gets. All kinds of cover two. Don't even bother blitzing him because he tears you up. And the gunslinger young guy that's the beauty of Brady. Brady will paper cut you over and over and over and over and over for 20 years, where a lot of these gunslingers think, I'm jumping out of my skin. I got to drive one in between the safeties and boom, there's a pick,
Right. Hero ball. But the hero ball is what finally got him past the 49ers in the Super Bowl. So I'm thinking about, how the 49ers seasons have ended recently, and Patrick Mahomes is the one that keeps me up at night over Aaron Rodgers, which is why I'd have him at number one. And number 3 is coming fast as well here.
Oh man.
In Josh Allen. I wouldn't fight anybody for having him number 1, but I would definitely not put him any higher than number 2, because I think Patrick Mahomes is still number 1 there, and he got him last year too in the playoffs, although didn't really get him, but the coin flip. But Josh Allen's, and we haven't seen Josh Allen's best yet, where we've seen a lot of these other guys kind of peak where you wouldn't expect to see maybe necessarily a lot more than what we've already seen from him. There might be more there for Josh Allen.
Oh, his rapid ascension is unlike any I've ever seen from the quarterback position, particularly his mechanics and accuracy and ability to make all the throws with touch. Again, we know what he is. I think there's a bit of recency bias in his favor because how amazing he was in the playoffs and during that late run. But I don't think his regular season last year was as good as the one before it. I think he was a little more inconsistent during the year than people like to remember.
Okay.
Again, I'm harping on the negatives, and it's hard to climb up with some of these negatives.
Like everyone heaps so much praise on these guys all
Yep.
day, every day. So Matt Williamson's going to bring him down a peg or two, bring him down to earth a little bit.
This next guy's hard to bring down a peg or two, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And to be honest, I'd have the next guy a little bit higher on this list. We'll go 4 through 10 on how ESPN's article. Well, it's not ESPN, but the league executives and coaches rank quarterbacks in the NFL. But first, let's talk a little bit about Dave. Hindsight's 2020. You can't change the past, but if you get a little help from future self, you might want to. Maybe you could ask to borrow a little bit of cash. Now you can with Dave. Dave is the banking app that can help you get up to $500 instantly with extra cash. You can finally tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out without any hangups. No interest and no credit check needed with Dave's. And millions of people have already done it. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get financial relief they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch, maybe need some extra help, a little extra cash, download the Dave app and think of it as a helping hand from future you. Download the Dave app now from the App Store. That's Dave, D-A-V-E. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer rates do apply. Banking provided by Evolve, member FDIC. Which NFL stars move the betting lines the most? Well, our friends at BetOnline have helped us out there. And starting July 18th, the Locked On gives you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers at BetOnline. Available Monday. It was this Monday it started, so go check it out. There's a lot of videos already up on the Locked On NFL channel on YouTube, which is also the home of Peacock and Williamson. Wherever you find the Locked On NFL podcast is where you can find the breakdown. And I do make an appearance or two because I do host Locked On 49ers, and there are a 49ers player or two. Not going to ruin the list, but some 49ers do show up on the top 50 list of line movers in the NFL. Okay, Matt, Tom Brady coming in at number 4 on the list as voted by league executives. And I wouldn't even, and some folks did rank him number 1, and there was a number 1 vote for all of these top guys. So, it's not like everybody saw it exactly the same. It's just that Rodgers got the most votes, then Patrick Mahomes got the next most, then Josh Allen, and then Tom Brady. I would have my personal list. I think these are the top 4, but my list would go Mahomes, Brady, Allen, Rodgers. That's the order. And I know Rodgers has the MVPs recently, but the other 3 just scare me a little bit more. And Tom Brady, death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's just, he's the guy you don't want to face ever.
I know. And it wasn't long ago that I thought defensive coordinators would much rather game plan for Brady than they would Mahomes or Allen or even Lamar or these unbelievably athletic guys that 4 or 5 seconds into the down are still making plays. And I don't have a coverage scheme to hold up for 4 or 5 seconds. But Brady's superpower is knowing what you're going to do before you do it. And the ball comes out and there's no no defense has the perfect scheme. And he knows every possible weakness. So we know what he is. I mean, he's an utter superstar. And just a couple notes to throw in here. And I'm trying to reach for negatives. Obviously, he's not a great runner. He's not a great athlete or play extender. I will say he has had a nice benefit in Tampa Bay of playing with a very, very good supporting cast. I mean, including the Antonio Browns and Gronkowskis and O-line. He went there for a reason, and the weather. So he's no dummy. He didn't go to Houston, so that has helped him as well. But again, how do you argue with this guy? And the other thing is, I think they threw the ball more than any team in the league last year. By the way, he's not just handing it off.
He's 20 years older than the guy in front of him and behind him on this.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He's 18 or 19 years older than Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is already on his 2nd contract in the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, it's remarkable. I mean, I can't imagine how much older he is than Ritter and Malik Willis and those guys.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Double.
Well, actually, I think last year's class is younger. Trey Lance is younger than all those quarterbacks from this year.
You're right.
Because Trey Lance is only 21. So yeah, he's got almost 25 years on a guy like Trey Lance and Justin Fields. There's not much to say about.
No, I don't know what else to even.
But my question to you is number 5, Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals. Is he the next Tom Brady?
I have a hard time with he's a winner, intangibles, but I put the huge check in the Joe Burrow box for winner, intangibles, leadership, and he might be the most accurate quarterback in the league right now. My concerns with him, he wouldn't be 5 for me. And to be honest with you, I think I'd put Herbert slightly above him because they're both the same draft class, so if we forever linked, but that's close. It's very easy to say the Bengals had garbage O-line and now Burrow won't get sacked anymore. Well, I think the thing he needs to work on is helping his O-line, getting the ball out a little quicker. It's easy to blame the O-line and think Joe has no warts, but sacks are also a quarterback stat, and he holds the ball too long.
The combination of a better offensive line and him just growing as a quarterback,
it's coming. Right,
it's something you see there. Like Drew Brees got better at it throughout his career. He wasn't getting the ball out in 2.3 seconds his rookie year or his second year. He kind of got really to that. Hard. Tom Brady did as well. And you get a little older and you realize I probably don't need to tear another ACL. I need to not take 9 sacks in a playoff game. And just,
right, self-preservation is important.
Even though he hung in there and made some plays. So, but yeah, Joe Burrow, it's almost scarier with Tom Brady, Joe Burrow, guys like that, where like, I don't even know what it is that's going to beat me, but I know he's going to beat me somehow.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I don't want the ball in his hands at the end of the game. And, he could be my quarterback all day long. I have nothing against Burrow at all. I just think he'd probably be 6 for me, not 5. I would have Herbert slightly ahead of him.
Sneaky athletic too, is Joe Burrow.
Yes.
Matthew Stafford at number 6, coming off a Super Bowl. We talked a lot about, okay, does this, solidify his Hall of Fame status? Because he's got a Super Bowl ring now, does Matthew Stafford. But I think one thing's pretty darn clear is how impactful he has been. And he wasn't holding down the Detroit Lions for all those years. It was the organization, the franchise that was holding him down. He comes to the Rams, who were, ready to go. And guess what? Goes and wins the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Still some inconsistencies, still some turnovers that I don't love, but I think he's always been 8 to 10 and now deserves to probably be 7-ish. Again, I'd probably put Herbert ahead of him. What you really see about Stafford, especially going from Goff to Stafford, is just all the difficult throws that he attempts, a dig route over the middle of the field, deep downfield, or a deep post between 2 safeties. He's going to try that stuff where Goff didn't, and he has special abilities still.
He's kind of the opposite of Rodgers, where he'll take too many chances.
Yeah, he leans that way a little too far.
He's always been kind of hero ball guy. And maybe he's at the perfect point of his career, but he still did that last year. He threw an interception that went right through Jaquiski Tartt's hands against the 49ers in the NFC Championship game. If that's an interception and the Rams season ended on Stafford throwing a pick instead of them going to the Super Bowl, how different would we be talking about Stafford right now? And 100%. That was just a guy dropped an interception that was in his wickets. We went right through his midsection, and he threw a couple more picks in the Super Bowl, right? Was it 2 interceptions he threw in the Super Bowl? So
yeah. I mean, I was going to bring up the interceptions. He tied for the league lead. I mean, he threw 17 of them.
Which is why you would put Justin Herbert ahead, and Justin Herbert comes in at number 7 on this list.
Yeah, I'd have Herbert slightly over Burrow, too. He's one that I'm having a really hard time finding weaknesses for, and he's only 24. I mean, he's right there with Allen and Mahomes as a thrower and as an overall talent. I mean, his first year, he didn't have much of an O-line. I thought he overcame a lot in his first year. He could be 1 next year, and we might all just be like, oh, yeah, he's 1.
One of the sources here, and all of the sources, whether they're coaches or, high-level players or GMs or scouts or whatever they are, none of them are named. Everyone's anonymous. One of them said he will be the best quarterback in the game. And people are just going to start being less and less surprised as it goes along. So I find that fascinating. But nobody ranked him higher than 5.
Yeah, and I would have him 5. I didn't see that quote, to be fully transparent, but I just said if he's 1 next year, we all might just be like, oh, yeah, Herbert's 1. Let's have a question on who's 2. I mean, he's capable of doing that.
He's on the Josh Allen path of, oh, crap, this guy's scary good.
Fewer weaknesses, though, at that stage of his career than Allen.
Better earlier for sure. So he had less ground to
yeah.
make up, but that's also what's been so remarkable about Josh Allen. You have to give him so much credit because it wasn't all Brian Daboll. Like he had to work. He got a lot
big
better.
Time.
And that's another thing that I see from people, and they talk about now. It's probably going to go on for years and years where you have a prospect that's raw. And you say, oh, well, Josh Allen went from 52% to 69% passer. It was like
that's normal.
You shouldn't expect that to happen. It happened one time, and it might not ever happen again.
Yeah, again, this is a different conversation, and I grew up saying, being grinded into my head. Quarterbacks are not going to get more accurate, especially going from college to NFL when the windows are smaller. But one thing I'm a little open to, and I'm not saying anyone's going to make the jumps Allen did, because Dak made a little jump. I just think these Jordan Palmer quarterback coaches, what they're doing with body chemistry and physiological, and your knee's a little too bent, that's why your accuracy wanes, and technology. I do think the stuff that goes on away from the team is far better than it's ever been.
Yeah, technology, video work, and what they're able to do in the offseason, it does change things. That you basically have a constant 24-hour a day coach if you want one.
Yeah, biomechanics.
Right. Okay, we'll finish up the list. That was Justin Herbert coming in at number 7. We'll get 8, 9, 10, some honorable mentions, what they got wrong, what they got right from league executives and coaches on the top quarterbacks in the NFL. But how about our friends at Built Bar? They're always inventing new, healthy, tasty snacks, and it's always mind-blowing how they're able to get all that flavor into a Built Bar, yet have it be low in calorie and low in sugar. And they've done it again with the Coconut Brownie Chunk. And you can get both the classic Coconut Brownie Chunk flavor of Built Bar, or if you like the marshmallowy puffs, you can get the Coconut Brownie Chunk Puff as well at Built.com. Both bars covered in 100% real chocolate, so it's like a fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness. But again, like I said, low calorie, low sugar, high protein, and all delicious. You don't have to choose between delicious and healthy anymore. 17 grams of protein in most Built Bars, but only 130 to 150 calories in most Built Bars. 5 grams of sugar. It's pretty amazing. Low in net carbs, high in fiber. It is the perfect snack to reach for. Get that protein in your body without all the sugar, without all of the calories. Replace all of those terrible for you snacks and all your secret hiding spots at work, in your purse, in your glove box, in your car, of course, in your pantry at home. Replace them with Built Bars so you're reaching for a snack that tastes great, that you feel good about eating, that is good for you. Oh, yeah, and is covered in 100% real chocolate. So find the Coconut Brownie Chunk Bar and all of the flavors at Built.com. Get a mixed bar if you're not sure what flavor you want. Go to Built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Again, that is promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Russell Wilson and his new home with the Denver Broncos coming in at number 8. I think is a good spot for Russell Wilson. Don't really know what to expect from him outside of Seattle, but I like his weapons. I think it's a really good landing spot for Russ.
Yeah, and he deserves all benefits of the doubts because his resume is awesome. I would have a tough time. Wilson versus Stafford to me is a good conversation. But they quote here, he hasn't really had a great 18 months on the field. You know, all last year was pretty suspect, and he finished the year before that pretty suspect. And it's easy to say, well, they didn't let him cook, and Seattle's living in the Stone Ages. But they didn't let him cook, and they were living in the Stone Ages 3 years ago when he was one of the best players in the league. I mean, he hasn't played great lately either. I do think he'll be a massive success for the Broncos. But if we're going to harp on negatives, which I promised to do, there's times where, because of his height, he does not see things come open in the middle of the field. He's a much better outside the numbers than inside the numbers passer. And he's overcome it, but it doesn't mean it's not a weakness.
And we haven't quite seen the growth of efficiency from him. He's kind of the same player he was, but not quite as quick as he used to be at 33 years old. So, can he take that next step? And you're right, get the ball out quicker, find more easy intermediate layup throws instead of that rollout and trying to hit the deep play. So, I don't know what to expect from Russell Wilson, where he's at in his career. He's a really good player, even underrated, I think, at times because of how much the Seattle Seahawks won and didn't win before he got there. But it is weird that he was on an MVP pace for half of 2020, then kind of has a rough second half of the year, or just not as good as the first half of the year, and then was injured last year. So you can explain away the 2021 because of some injuries. They're changing offensive coordinators because clearly something wasn't adding up with what the Seattle Seahawks wanted to do on offense, what Russell Wilson wanted to do. So I think it's actually really good that he got away. Maybe it's good for the Seahawks. It's harder to see that, but I think it'll be better for Russell Wilson. I think we're going to see a better Wilson than we've seen for the last 18 months too.
I tend to agree. Again, I give him every benefit of the doubt. I think his move to Denver is going to increase his status for Hall of Fame voters, legacy, all that stuff. I think he'll be very, very good for them. But he is 33 years old. I mean, a lot of his story has been written.
Desean Watson, only 26 years old still, which is hard to believe. He comes in at number 9 on this list. And he
BP, do me a favor if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'd like to lump these next 3 together. I know there's only 10 on the list, but by the time people are listening to this, I think a lot of people realize this article came out and the immediate reaction is, how on earth is Lamar Jackson not in the top 10? And I get that. When I heard that clip, I'm like, how on earth is Lamar Jackson not in the top 10? But 9 and 10 are Desean and Dak. And then I guess Lamar missed it by half a vote or something. Like him and Dak were neck and neck for the votes. I don't know how I'd rank those 3, to be honest with you. And Watson in himself, as we say way too often on the show, is just a huge asterisk. I mean, not only is he possibly not playing this year, but he didn't play all last year, And if we're just talking about the football player, I would put Watson over Jackson. But I don't think you can just talk about the football player in this instance. You got to be on the field.
I understand why you would get votes, but there's no way that Desean Watson belongs on this list because you have to be playing
probably the best way to
be a top 10 football player.
And then therefore Lamar should be a top 10 quarterback. But
right. And Lamar should he should be ahead of both of them anyway, because Lamar was right there. Like if you said even before last season, if you said, okay, Desean Watson, Lamar Jackson, where do they rank on this list? They're 5 and 6 or something. They're back to back anyway. So easily Lamar Jackson should leapfrog, and I do think Lamar Jackson's a much more difficult player to play against. As I talked about earlier on, like who keeps me up at night if I'm trying to play, if I'm playing against your team the next day. Dak's a really good player, but I'm much more worried about Lamar Jackson than Dak Prescott. So I think everyone's gripes are real, and at the very lowest on this list, Lamar Jackson should be number 9. Okay,
and then that's a good point. I mean, if I was building the Williamson list, I couldn't feel good about myself putting Watson over Lamar. You know what I mean? Just because he hasn't played, and you have to be a leader, you have to be accountable, especially at this position. Character matters. I'm a big Dak believer, and I think he's been a little bit of out of sight, out of mind since that really gruesome injury. But that was one of the best offenses in the league last year. But I'm with you. I mean, if you ask defensive coordinators, they would probably rather play against Dak than Lamar. Lamar is a total nightmare. He's an anomaly. He's a unicorn. But I mentioned I want to talk about the negatives, and there's a new thing about Lamar that really worries me. I mean, to be very honest, and I think I've gone down this road before on podcasts, but when he came in the league, every defense was petrified to play man coverage or blitz him, which makes perfect sense. Like, we can't turn our back to him. We got to play zone. I can't come after him with 5 or 6 men, because what if he dances around 2 of them? They only have a couple guys on the back end to try to bring him down. Well, his processing got exposed, and the Dolphin game was the best example, with heavy blitzes, 6-man pressures, Xavier Howard on islands behind them, because the Ravens never had man-beating receivers either, because they never saw man. And now his ability versus big blitz and man coverage to get it out quick, to be the Brady processor, has been exposed, and he's going to see a ton of it. And that's why I didn't understand why the Ravens not traded Marquise Brown, but I think Bateman will be a good man coverage beater, but they need one more.
It's a big year for Lamar to
to
prove he can adjust to the adjustments and prove he can stay
contract on the line.
Yeah, he's got the style. He runs the ball a lot, and he's a magic about not getting hit. But the more he runs, the more he's going to get hit. And if he doesn't have his legs under him, how valuable is he? And it's the reason I talked about the old school list with the quarterbacks is there's still a lot of dinosaurs out there, and they see Lamar Jackson's playing style, and they're like, that's not what a quarterback is. I need a pocket passer, period. Right. And I think he just gets dinged for that unfairly because, look, there's so many other things. Important quarterback. And that's where, Dak gets more votes. And Dak didn't get a ranking higher than 7 either. And
I don't think deserves it. Right. But I would never have him below 11 or 12.
True. Very true. So, and I think there is a gap after those guys we've talked about. And the thing I hate from Dak's perspective is it made everybody pile on Dak and talk bad about Dak. And it's not Dak's fault that he was ranked in the wrong spot, because you don't have to bring one guy down to bring another guy up. Dak is a really good football player. I would just have Lamar higher.
Yeah. And I think that they were really like a vote or two apart, and maybe it did come down to some old school GM going, I don't like that style of quarterback. He should have been a wide receiver. I can't put him in the top 10, Last note, though, you mentioned that there really is a top 11. I think there is. If we include Watson, which I think we should. None of the rookies or young guys are even in the conversation yet. But I think these next 2, these honorable mentions, are pretty clearly 12 and 13 in whatever order you want to put them now.
Kyler Murray should be higher, but just needs to put it together. He's almost he's almost done what Russell Wilson has done, but then doesn't have the decade before that of playing at the high level. You know what I mean? Like, you're just expecting something more, and it's like, okay, where's that next step, Kyler? Like, what's going on here? Is it because of the offense, because of his offensive coordinator, or is he just not quite going to be there? And obviously, size, and people are going to say, oh, he's too short to play NFL quarterback. Maybe that's why he's never going to reach the upper echelon. But again, he's a tough player to play against, and I'm expecting more from Kyler. So Kyler, go be on this list next year.
Yeah, and a couple thoughts on Kyler. Obviously, his running athleticism is remarkable, vastly underrated from an accuracy perspective at all levels, deep thrower. He's a great passer and never gets that credit, but he has some of those little problems, as Russell Wilson did, in terms of seeing the field. I think he's developing as a processor, as we talked about with Lamar, but isn't there yet. And I wanted to run this. I've been meaning to talk to you about this for a while with Kyler, because there's been a lot of talk about him as a leader. And I don't know the young man. I just know that a lot of people don't think he's the first one in the building, last one to leave, most popular guy on the team, Joe Cool hanging with the O lineman, and I think there's a lot of value to that. Joe Burrow, we talked about his leadership. But I've heard someone describe Kyler as this, and I know you have a baseball background, that Kyler, who was drafted very early by the A's, is a baseball leader. He's not a football leader, where it's kind of an individual, sport. We all travel together. It's a long season. I don't have to rah-rah you up for 16, 17 games. He might be mentally, and the way he looks at the games or sports, more through baseball eyes than football eyes.
Yeah, I can see that, and I'm not going to speak to Kyler Murray's work ethic, because I'm not sure about that. But certainly, just with interviews, and even from the start, from the whole is he going to play football, is he going to play baseball thing, and he's on camera getting interviewed, but he's kind of looking over at his dad for what answer to give.
Right.
Quiet, and there's always been something weird, and that doesn't mean that's the type of personality that can't be great or can't win in the NFL. And he might be working really hard off the behind the scenes. So I'm not going to say anything about work ethic and any of that stuff, but just as far as the leadership and how he comes off, just from what we can see of him, it leads you to questions something's weird about it, right? There's something weird about the way he carries himself, and maybe it's just young, maybe it doesn't matter at all, and he's completely different. But when the camera's on him, and it's what you and I see, something does seem not quite right there, is from a leadership perspective.
But no one talks on a baseball team of, he's the leader of the team, he's the face of the team. You come to the plate one every 9 times, they hit the ball to you once in a while. Maybe you're the best player or the star arm, but you're not. There's not a quarterback in baseball, and he just kind of comes across that way. And with his background, that would add up. Really, my biggest concern with him is I want him to be the same player in December as he is in September.
Yep, and I get the feeling, and I know our colleague Alex Clancy of Locked On Cardinals would tell you this, is that Cliff Kingsbury's holding him back. So,
I think there's something to that. Yeah, 100%.
The other 2 names that got votes, nobody else got a vote besides Kirk Cousins, and you mentioned Derek Carr already on this list. But again, Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, they don't scare me at all. Kirk Cousins is the Mendoza line of, starting NFL quarterbacks. I think we've talked about that. It's like, if you're worse than Kirk Cousins, you're trying to find a new player unless, you already have a young up and coming player. But I mean, at this point, I mean, I might, I would rather have Justin Fields or Trey Lance than Kirk Cousins. You know what I mean? So it's certainly really any of the first rounders from last year. But that's not necessarily what this list is who's playing at this level right now. And Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. So, but it's interesting. Nobody else even got votes. And Derek Carr is a tough one because you love Derek Carr. I'm not as
loves a strong word.
Derek Carr, but compared to me,
I like him more than you do. But yeah.
He's just above that line. He's above the Kirk Cousins line, and he was voted that way. And tomorrow, if you had to bet on a quarterback to go out and win a game with, would you take Derek Carr over Kyler Murray?
I'd rather play against Carr.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. I mean, so I think Kyler and Carr are their own tier. They couldn't be any different. I think Carr is clearly the 13th best quarterback in the league, I guess, by these parameters. To your Cousins point, I'll be shocked if he gets any vote next year because I think Fields, Lance, Lawrence, somebody will not be the next Herbert or Burrow, but will be in the conversation and bump the Cousins of the world out of there.
Those second-year quarterbacks, I can't wait to see how they turn out this year. It's going to be fun. Like, there's going to be some it
might even be Mac Jones playing the Cousins role, but just doing it better than Cousins.
Right? Are we talking about Mac Jones like we just talked about Joe Burrow?
Right. Yeah. Boy, there's nothing around him, and they won 11 games in New England. How on earth did that happen?
And like, as bad as some of the seasons look for Zach Wilson and Justin Fields, I would not be shocked at all if we were talking about, wow, these guys are really good, and they got a lot better. And so that's what's going to be so much fun about this football season to me is those second-year quarterbacks.
I'm not trying to make a bold prediction because he was not good as a rookie. I think Lawrence will be on this list next year.
I mean, there's nobody's retiring anymore. So it's like, how long is Rodgers and because a lot of these other guys are pretty young. How long are Brady and Rodgers going to be on the list? Because there needs to be somebody coming off the list because it's going to be hard to pass those guys up, even if they do take a huge step in year two.
Yeah. The other positions at least lose people quicker.
Right.
And Brady has been sitting on the top 10 for my whole lifetime.
That's pretty amazing. All right. That is how the league sees the top quarterbacks in the NFL. It's a fun read. Go check that out from Jeremy Fowler at ESPN to get all the anonymous quotes from league sources on all the quarterbacks in the NFL. More to come daily as we get ready for training camps 2022 right here on Peacock and Williamson. Back at it tomorrow. Talk to you then.